Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is having a lovely Friday. Welcome back. The series took a little bit of a break over the summer, but we are back with Net's Inspiration on Demand, Creators in Conversation. And we have an amazing conversation today, and we have a couple in the lineup going forward. So I'm really excited to talk about that. But we took a month off, but we're ready to dive back in and hear from some incredible artists in this field. My name is Patricia Garza. I'm the Director of Programs and Engagement here at Network of Ensemble Theaters. I'll do a brief visual description for those who need description support. I'm a Latinx human with short black and gray hair and purple cat eye glasses. I'm in my office with many, many books behind me and a beautiful golden curtain. I'm today wearing a very sunny blouse with flowers and that are yellow and gray and a little tiny yellow earrings. Very Van Gogh inspired. I prefer they, them pronouns. And I want to kick us off today by really acknowledging the Indigenous peoples which are the traditional stewards of the land on which I live. But we can go ahead and invite everybody to go ahead and put into the chat where you're zooming in from. So I'm zooming in from Tongva Quiche here in East Los Angeles, California. And if you want to participate in the land acknowledgement today, we'll go ahead and drop a link into the chat so you can do so if you need some support around that. And that beautiful music, I just wanted to say that you heard greeting us into the space was created actually by a Net member, Trey McGee. So thank you, Trey. You may have heard it in a previous inspiration. Trey let us play the music one more time for us for today. So Trey is a theater artist based in Brooklyn, New York. And his mission, which I thought was just so beautiful, is to make engaging and accessible art through laughter and music. I just love that. And Trey created this original composition that you're hearing just for Inspiration on Demand. So thank you, a huge thanks to Trey for partnering with Net. I'll actually drop a link to Trey's website in the chat as well if you want to give a listen to some of his other amazing work. I also want to give a shout to my amazing colleagues that are here with me today, supporting Alicia Tonzik, our Executive Director, we'll give a wave, and Nicole Shiro, our Finance and Operations Manager. So if you have any tech needs, they'll help you out in the chat. Some quick access logistics. We are recording for future viewing, so you can check this out on our YouTube channel. The chat is enabled, so just keep that in mind that we can see everything in the chat. And if you have a need for closed captioning, you should see a live transcript scrolling on the bottom. But if for some reason it's not, you can go ahead and click enable audio transcription. Or if you want to turn that off, that's also where you'll find it in that bottom ribbon. And we will be kind of looking at speaker view, but if you want to change your views, that's again in the upper right corner. So a short reminder of what we're doing here today. It's Net 25th birthday, 25th anniversary this year, and we really wanted to create a space to get a spark of inspiration after, a couple hard years. So we co-created this series actually with our incredible board members in hopes that we can offer this gift of inspiration to those live with us here in the Zoom room, and also for those who want to catch it on demand on our YouTube later on. We posed this question to our board. Who are your mentors? Who are the artists you admire that inform and activate your ensemble practice? And we've gotten such an amazing, incredible array of voices in this conversation. So I really encourage you to check out the YouTube channel to see all the recordings. And I'm happy to announce our next couple of conversations. We have Shoshana Bass in conversation with Carlton Turner on October 26th. It's gonna be amazing, talking really about working within kind of rural settings and community building. And then Claudia Alec, our board member, in conversation with Tyrone Davies, the new Associate Artistic Director at Center Theater Group, on November 8th. So you can check all that out. We'll put those on the website, and you can register for those conversations starting on Monday. So welcome first to our guest, Sharon Day. Sharon Day is the executive director of and co-founder of the Indigenous Peoples Task Force. She's an award-winning artist and writer, and she's the co-editor of Sing, Whisper, Shout, Pray, Feminist Visions for a Just World. And we'll put a link up for that in the chat. And Drink of the Winds, Let the Water Flow Free. Her poetry has been published in numerous anthologies, including Open Rivers Journal, Indigenous Women's Journal, St. Paul Almanac, and others. In addition, Sharon is also an actor, musician, director, and an environmental activist with so many awards. So welcome, Sharon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I could have went on, but and to our amazing board member, Dipankar Mukherjee, and I hope I pronounced that correct. Please correct me if I did not. Is a professional director, artistic director of Pangea World Theater, which I think most of you know, but we'll put it in the chat. Pangea is an international theater in Minneapolis that is a progressive space for arts and dialogue. And as a director, Dipankar has worked in India, England, Canada, and the United States. And you facilitate processes that disrupt colonial, racist, and patriarchal modalities of working and collaboratively searching for an alternative way of working together. I love that. I hope we talk about that today. And of course, many awards to your name as well. So Dipankar, I'll kind of pass it to you to get us started, but maybe you can ground us kind of in how you know Sharon and how this relationship started.
Yes, thank you, Patricia, and thank you, Nicole, for your support. And our head office, Alicia Tonsik, is here too on behalf of NET. Thank you, everybody, for your support, and friends who are listening to this or who will listen in the future, hopefully. Thank you, everybody. My name is Dipankar, and I'm a proud board member of network of Ensemble theaters, and it's really a privilege and a breath, a very different kind of breath to belong to NET. And so when this program got crafted and created and curated, that so whom do you bring to a space which is sacred? It started there. It's not a generic. Like when you go to somebody's house, you get a bottle of wine and okay, we have got something. But if you go to somebody's house, they're a writer, you buy them a notebook and a pen. So the specificity of whom do we bring to a NET conversation is something that I take very seriously. And Sharon Day, my mentor, my friend, my thought partner. I just know as long as Sharon is standing, she won't let me fall through the cracks. And Sharon always has, I feel, even her presence in a room, even your presence, Sharon, in a room makes me feel that there is somebody who has my back. And so it's a really very personal honor to get a chance to engage with you, Sharon. So thank you so much for being here, and I really am so grateful that we are because of NET and Patricia's consistent reminders. I'm getting this opportunity to engage with you. So thank you, Sharon. And our bios get read, and those are all things of the past, really. And it's important to read them because we live in a society where if you just say, on my bio, I tried it once and somebody told me, oh, that's very presumptuous. I just wrote, I'm a seeker, and stopped it at that. That's because I was so busy creating the play, I did not have time to send the bio. But oh God, that raised so much of conversation. So, but actually, practically, I just did not send it. So thank you so much for reading our bios, Patricia. So Sharon, just wanted to if I had to explain who you are, Sharon, I always think of a huge fire, in the center, a sacred fire, burning, and it's deeply contextualized in spirituality. It has the cutting edge of socio-political intentionality, and at the core of it, the warmth and inclusive spirit of you building the community of which I'm a part of, and I've experienced it firsthand. And it's not a one-day relationship; it's a relationship for over 30 years. And for friends to know that Sharon's grandson, so Curtis Kirby III, is my directing mentee, and who's a brilliant director and directs all over the place. So I have very selfishly stitched myself in the center so that I cannot get out of both. So Sharon, thank you for agreeing to be a part of these few precious, very precious and sacred moments. So I want to just begin with you, Sharon. Why do you do what you do? What shaped you? And who shaped you? Maybe we begin with that. Why do you do what you do? Because you do a lot.
Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. First of all, and Miigwech, thank you so much for having me. And as you were describing that fiery, description, I'm just hoping that the foundation person I spoke to this morning, when he told me like, well, we can't really do that, and so then I told him, why can't you, anyhow, I hope some of that, I hope he heard some of the other things I said as well. So, well, in terms of just first of all, about how we met some 30 years ago. Dipankar was directing a play called Shadow Lines, and me and my grandson, who was about 5 or 6 years old at the time, we were both in that, and it was an ensemble piece about mostly migration and movements, and except for we were the indigenous people who were here, and I remember thinking about a week into the rehearsal, like, how is this going to really happen? How is he really going to put this together? And then, like magic, it did, and it was beautiful piece outside in the amphitheater at the Indian Center, and so that was the beginning. What shaped me, I think, mostly was, I'm from northern Minnesota, small, a reservation just south of the Canadian border, and I was born on the reservation, and then my parents moved away a little bit. But I love listening to the stories that my dad would tell, that my girlfriend's parents would tell, and they'd start telling stories. All the kids would leave the room, but not me. I would sit and listen, and sometimes my friends would say, "That's so boring. Why do you sit and listen to them?" But it was like being transported to another time and place, and in fact, I heard my dad tell the story so many times, driving into Net Lake on that 20-mile road, and you come to a place called 7 Mile Corner, and it took me a long time to realize that 7 miles meant 7 miles from the reservation, not that it was 7 miles around. But in those woods, he would say, he would tell a story, and when I was a little kid, all I could see when I looked out the window was, the telephone poles, but he would tell a story and about, this first man spirit and the things that he did. And I would ask him sometimes, well, where does he live? And he'd say, he lives in the woods there. And so to this day, when I drive by there, I look for that first man being spirit. And so, I think listening to stories, and they always had a message, especially if you did something wrong, then they would sit you down and they would tell you a story. We did not have, um, they did not, it was like uncivilized to hit a child, but they sat you down and they told you a story. And by the end of the story, you knew exactly what they meant to tell you and how you were to act from that point forward. And so, I listen to stories. I love stories, and I
Yeah,
love telling those stories.
yeah. The seed, going back to the seed, as I've journeyed with you, I've got a new sort of, not new, consciousness about the word seed, that who seeds, and because a seed knows, and so going to the core is so important. And ensemble work for you, Sharon, you have always been ensemble. You embody ensemble spirit. Your work is with the community. Where theater is concerned, I mean, you're such a powerful voice in the field of theater. To me, when you first talked about At the Foot of the Mountain Theater, the very beginning, when you shared that the Spider Women had come down, I mean, that was the context which happened way before the word ensemble became a choice, but that was your breath. And then Ikido in the early 90s, right, Sharon, when you first created the youth ensemble, Ikido, and I know graduates who have gone through those youths are now young men and young women, identified men, identified people all over the country and different fields. And so those are strong seeds that you have grown. Um, so when you see and you're seeing the growth of those artists, negotiation with those artists that we live in this present world, as a witness, Sharon, you are seeing society, you're seeing what's happening in the field of art, in the field of just basic living, especially contextualizing the community that you come from, community that you observe, community that you steward. What, if I could say as a witness, what do you see, and what would you speak that what needs to shift?
Well, I think it is shifting. But, at the Foot of the Mountain Theater, it seems like another lifetime, but I was a counselor at a halfway house, and they had hired me to integrate their curriculum. And it was an all male halfway house, and they were inviting women, small number of women, into their program. There was no place for women. And so At the Foot of the Mountain was presenting for colored girls. And I had seen it. I went and I saw it. And it was the first theater that I could see myself in the story. And so the next year when they presented it again, I took all of the women who were in the halfway house to see that play. And had I not known about that, I might not have ever gone over to see Spider Woman. But when I saw that play, and I took the women to it, I could see like how that resonated with their lives as well. And so many years later, sitting in a small circle, with Lori Carlos, like that really meant a lot to me. And telling her about that, and she reached out and grabbed my hand and said, she said, when we produced that, like we didn't see you then, you know, see you now. And but that so then when at the foot of the mountain, you know, Phyllis Jane Rose brought Spider Woman there. That was when I first saw Native theater, and they did probably 3 different plays there, and went to see all of them. And then of course they created an ensemble in Minneapolis, and created a play called Neurotic Exotic. I can't remember what the third word was, but it was really impressive. And of course that began my my long history with Spider Woman. And so, you know, I think you know, I created Ikitawin Theater, although it was called Ogichida Gikino Magi Youth Theater Ensemble in 1990. And we created that out of necessity. You know, HIV, AIDS, you know, so many, we lost so many friends, and many from the artistic communities. And I knew that there had to be a way to get the message out to young people, and to save their lives. And so Karen Starr from Bremer Foundation, we asked her for money. She gave us $15,000, and that's what we started the theater with. We kept 10, and we gave 5 to Spider Woman, and they came 2 times that year, and 2 weeks the first time, and then Muriel came back in December, and I showed her what we were doing. She said, "Ay, ay, 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 ay." And you know, and I said, "Well, Muriel, they're only kids." And she said, "Do you want me to lie to them? Do you want me to tell them they're good when they're not?" And so then she stayed for 6 weeks. And then when she left, Phyllis Jane Rose came and worked once a week with the kids, and you know, very different styles of directing, and but that's how we learned. And I forget what the question was.
No, never mind. The water keeps flowing. You know, what you're sharing meets. You know what you shared. And Laurie Carlos, you mentioned. Laurie was one of our friends, our mentor, and who has passed on, and has had great influence on our lives in Pangea World Theater and in other field of dance and theater and jazz theater, as she calls it. So Sharon, you know, with what you shared, you know, the what evolves your work is there's an immediacy to it. There's a necessity to it. It's not that one day, someday, when you know you saw this beautiful image in the sky, you decided to do art, right? You know, so your art and our art, the work that we create, gets crafted because of a need. The need pushes us to action, right? And would you share a little bit of you know, like, why is it important for you to do the work that you're doing now? Now, you know, always was a now, but now with what happened in Minneapolis with Brother Floyd's you know, murder, and the missing Indigenous women and children that has been going on. But there's an immediacy to your work, your visual art that you did. So can you talk about the necessity of the now, which prompts you to do your craft?
Well, I think, you know, even the old stories have to do with now, right? They have to do with what's happening in the world right now. And even in our spiritual ceremonies, you know, they're just stories. You know, they're just stories, teachings, until you see the evidence of them come to life. Then they become more than stories. They become the evidence or the truth of our teachings. And I think it's so important, you know, with Ikitawin, with what's happening around the country. Um, you know, if change is ever going to come, you know, we need people to rise up. And the only way they're going to rise up is if they have some direction, some beacon, something to rise up to. And I think that, you know, with George Floyd, we thought that was going to happen. You know, we thought that was going to happen, and that we were seeing a sea change. And just like that, you know, everything started rolling back. And even, you know, like the city, the state, the federal government, and even the foundations, you know, they all said, we're going to do this. We're going to be about equity. We're going to, you know, they all made a statement about George Floyd. And, but where's the evidence of what they said? You know, where do we see the change happening? And they all began to backtrack right away. And so that's why we created, you know, the Tree of Peace. Like that came out of rage, because our children had been out in the street, our grandchildren been out in the street during George Floyd, and then right away they started backtracking. And people, you know, in my generation, you know, we weren't able to be out in the street, even though we had worked for social justice all our life and racial justice. You know, we were sidelined because of COVID. And so I was like so angry about that. And as I sat with that for a couple of weeks, I began to think about, well, you know, a long time ago, the grandmothers, if there was a tribal leader who was not acting right, was acting in their own best self-interest as opposed to the communal good, the grandmothers would go, raise them up, and escort them out of the lodge. And I thought, well, that's what we need to do. But of course, that would never happen at the White House, right? We could never breach that door. We wouldn't do it with guns, you know, like those other folks, but we would try to just go. So I thought, okay, we can't do that. But what we can do is send a message to the future, to our children, to our grandchildren. This is the kind of life we want for you. And so I put out a call, and men, women across the country sent these beautiful leaves, you know, with messages to the future. And then we erected the Tree of Peace. But again, that was many people participated in that. And of course, we had that ceremony at the steps of the Capitol in October. And I think, you know, it's, you know, we can never, you know, we can never believe really, you know, what folks in power say they're going to do, because they will act in their own best self-interest, and that oftentimes isn't our self-interest. So what do? How do we keep that momentum going? And I think the other thing I've, you know, learned over the years is that we must do our work with love. You know, that has to be the message behind, you know, what we do. And I'll just, you know, after 9/11, I went with these, they invited me to go with them, these ministers, they were all women, and they were going to interview people at Ground Zero who were the first responders. So they said, will you come along with us? And I said, well, I'm not a minister. And they said, well, you're the closest thing to it. So I think they just wanted me to drive. But anyhow, so we drove across country, and, you know, and at that site, you know, at Ground Zero, I wrote a little message on the wall, and it said, where does the spirit live? The spirit lives in love. The spirit lives in love. Where does the spirit live? It was kind of a circular thing. And wrote a little song there. Talks about, you know, magic and miracles is what the world needs now. And I believe that, you know, real change comes from that spirit of community from that place of love. And that place of love, is where the spirit lives.
That's beautiful. Would you like to share the song with us, Sharon? Do you remember uh, how does the tune go?
Yeah, it's English words. It's magic and miracles, magic and miracles, magic and miracles is what we need now. Magic, miracles, magic and miracles, magic, miracles is what the world needs now.
Yay!
It's a simple little ditty.
That's simple and profound, to be able to say that what we need, really, where does the spirit live? The spirit lives in love, and that's the core of it. And sometimes to be able to really keep ourselves vulnerable at a time when, with what everybody is going through and what we went through in Minneapolis, and when we are talking to, I'm so conscious that I'm talking to an Indigenous elder, and with the knowledge of the history of the community, to be able to still stand and say that at the core of it, we must stand on the foundation of love. It takes a lot of strength to be able to really internalize that and believe that, and so that's why you inspire me, Sharon. Sharon, the work, you use the word community, and I know you're in commune with nature, with different aspects of nature. You're in commune with the community, the people, and our accountability towards that community that we live in. We receive so much, and what we give back. And can you share a little bit about the work that you've been doing with water, and the rigor of that work and what you do? And because I got an opportunity to direct your play, Missouri River Water Walk, that was these powerful, strong water walkers, these women, and then with youth. And I was not the same after directing that piece, to realize that history and the reality of what you do. So can you share a little bit about your work with the water, and your accountability to the community? And I would love for my friends to know that part of.
Well, in our ceremonies, and we have the elements, fire, water, our medicines, and when we bring the water into the lodge, it's the women, and we are the ones who make the offering, gather the water, offer our petitions for the water, and sing the water songs. And men have their responsibilities, and that has to do with the fire. But what I know is what women do, and we are the caretakers of the water, because water is life. And to this point in time, women are the only ones who can bring life into the world. And so thus we're responsible for the water. And so, when things with the water, Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes, 45% of our water is polluted. And so what do we do about that? And so in 1998, we took our work out of the lodge, out of our ceremonial arena, and into a geopolitical arena. And that was trying to save Camp Coldwater. And then in 2003, Josephine Mendowman began the first water walk around Lake Superior, and continued to walk all 5 Great Lakes. And in 2011, I led my first walk from Gulf of Mexico to Lake Superior, with the 4 Directions Mother Earth Water Walk, and then have continued to lead walks since then. And I just came back on Tuesday from the Otter Tail River Walk, and we invite people of all races to walk with us, because we Indigenous people, we're the caretakers of this land. This is the Creator placed us here on this land. And so we're the caretakers. But if it's up to us alone, our population is so decimated through genocide and warfare that, we're just a small fraction. We lost 90% of our people. So if it's up to us, we're in really, really dire shape. But if we invite people to come with us, reconnect with the land, reconnect with the water. One of my teachers said, what would happen if all of the women of the world stood up and said, no more? I will not allow you to contaminate our rivers, no more to the cities, the farmers, the mining companies, the oil companies, no more. And when I think this taking care of the water is not just, Indigenous women, but, whenever I see pictures of who's gathering the water, in Africa, in Asia, it's always women. And so, we must do this work. We support the work of the environmentalists, but something is missing from that work. When you look at water only as H2O, hydrogen and 2 parts oxygen, water, Dr. Emoto, and the last time I was with him about 2 years ago, just before he passed, he said, God is in the water. What other essence has the ability to come from above, seep into the earth, and then rise up from the earth 27 years later? What other essence has the ability to flow horizontally north and south? And, vertically, horizontal, what others? And there can be no life without water. And so he said, God is in water. And so, it's rigorous, but I don't do it alone. I don't do anything alone. Whether it's creating the Tree of Peace or theater or music, we do it together. And walking the rivers, we do that together. And so, when Josephine passed a couple of years ago, I was able to be with her the night before, and I told her, I will walk and take care of the water for as long as I'm able. And I'm gonna be 70 in a week or so, 8-9 days, something like that. And we walked Line 3 this summer. We walked the Otter Tail. I'm going down to North Carolina end of October to walk the Haw and the Cape Fear River. And as long as the legs move, the knees keep moving, the hips keep moving, I would say to my feet, don't fail me now, like we got to keep on going. And so, so that's what I'll do.
Yes. Yeah, well, I'm sure, people who are listening in completely know why you inspire me. Why? Sharon, that thank God for you. Thank God for your passion. Thank God for your intentional vision, and thank God for your constant consciousness of giving back as a sense of accountability. And you teach me that, and you have taught me that. And whatever I learn from you, I teach to my students, and it's a blessing. And so much is given by you. Where do you plug in to charge, to recharge? Because we need you for another 100 years. So So
Well,
what do you do? Are there practices? Are there rituals, or your way of life? Begin, how do you recharge?
yeah, I think, I was very fortunate, several years ago to be awarded the Spirit Aligned, it's a cash award. And, I moved out of the city. My grandson has the house there that I loved for so many years, and along the Mississippi River. And I moved out to this, this land in Center City. And, I have a dog, Roxy. She's 14 years old, 15 now. And she is just running around here like the queen. And that's how I feel too. Like this land really rejuvenates me. You know, sitting down by the river, and a couple weeks ago, we've lost so many people this year. It was really weighing on me, and so my daughters and I, we went down to McGregor, and there's a beautiful effigy Bear Mounds Park there, and we just went hiking and had dinner, and it took our time coming home along the Mississippi, and it was like somebody flipped a light switch. I was so sad, and but just that little bit of time being away and hiking, it was like a light switch was lifted. But most of the time, it's being around people I love, and music, and and I love that show Res Dogs. That's like, like that's the real story. Like that's the authentic story. And I think, thank God that somebody, we're finally being allowed to tell our own stories. And I was I went to New York City. I was kind of worried about traveling, but I did go and was with friends, Spider Women, and I'll be in Misdemeanor Dreams this winter, and at La Mama, and at the Kennedy Center, with First Peoples Fund. I got to, and Dipankar, you helped me put that piece together, that we'll be performing there. And all of those things, just give you hope and inspiration, and you, Dipankar, have been such a source of inspiration for me too. And I love seeing the work at Pangea. I love being part of it. I keep trying to get off the board, but I love being on the board. And the board's going to come out here next week, and so all of those things, are rejuvenating and replenishing.
Thank you, Sharon. Patricia, if there are questions here.
Yes. First, I just want to thank Sharon and Dipankar for this incredible conversation. Yeah, I would love to make space for folks who have questions for either Sharon or Dipankar, or both, to put it in the chat. Or if you just want to, there's a small group. So if you want to just speak yourself into the space and ask your question directly, we welcome it. So just give a moment for those questions to come out. And I'm gonna throw mine in the interim while people think. I had a question, Sharon. What you said was so powerful around this hope that we all had, I think, in terms of the catalyst for change with the unfortunate events of George Floyd, and then the kind of disappointment or the sliding back that we're seeing. And I know you mentioned right now how you take care of yourself, but I would also love to know in terms of your work, are you brewing on that with the Tree of Life as one of the offerings? Are you having some new work that you're working on in response to that, or in response to anything else that's going on?
We, Spirit Aligned gave me also a little bit of money to do something to share some things with Native people, and so I was able to produce a new piece called Invisible Shadows, and that really tells the story from uh, the Native youth who live in Minneapolis and what their experiences were beginning with COVID. And then that sort of, went into George Floyd. And so we're hoping to film that piece before December and get that out. But it's great, working with the youth and, gathering their stories of what they experienced at that time and also what they hope for the future. And so that will be coming out. Look for that. We have a piece right now called "In My Shoes," and this was written by one of my mentees, Peyton Counts, and co-directed by Kirby and Peyton. And we took these are all youth from our summer program, and and for most of them, it was their first time acting. But we just presented it several times, and just this last week up at Fond du Lac, and to have 12 kids on stage at one time is really something. But they did a great job of it, and that piece really deals with uh, depression. It was funded by our suicide prevention program for youth. So it deals with bullying, missing and murdered Indian women, and how these young kids intervened. And if any of you have watched Red's Dogs, they had a episode, not this week, but I think 2 weeks ago, that dealt with a suicide on a reservation. And they also offered some folks came together and put together a kind of a listing of resources and how to talk. But in the play, the kids do that. They figure out how to intervene with one of their friends, and of course it works because it's theater, right? But in real life, there are so many things we need to do with our youth. But keeping them engaged in theater. Last year, they painted a mural on the church that we rent, and at the request of the church, of course. And the first image has to do with George Floyd. So, continuing to keep young people engaged. They come out here to the farm, and we hire some of them to work in the farm in the summer, and putting their hands in the dirt. The only reason I have the goats is because the kids wanted them. And but that means they're not here every day to take care of them. So
yeah, exactly. They're like, yeah, get those.
we want them. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. But that energy is so important, right? In these conversations. Yeah. And I would love to hear, Dipankar, I know you did such a beautiful job being facilitator, but I also would love to hear, I know it would be so hard to summarize, but maybe you can give us just one lesson you may have learned from Sharon that you kind of carry in your heart, in your work, for like in your own personal work. I know there's so many, but I would just love to hear you talk a little bit about that.
Definitely. Thanks, Patricia, for asking that. Yeah, I think just to continue doing the work with integrity, and to realize that these words, easy and not easy, those are just terminologies of English, and does neither is English Sharon's first language, neither is it mine, but we are good at it. So yeah, to continue the work, to continue the work. Sharon said she's going to hit 70, but the energy has only gone stronger and deeper, and the politics have become sharper. So that's something that Pangea's vision and mission is about. That it is about the community that we are in. So that's one thing, and I try hard sometimes. I want to arrive at the state where Sharon is, where I can have stand always on the foundation of love, because sometimes the injustices and inequity sort of grab me to such an extent that I lose that vision. But when I start doing the work like the way Sharon does, it brings me back to that path, that we have to be alive to do the work, and always to include, and to be in a room, to always be conscious of the fact that who's missing. When I see Sharon's work for past years, and when history of theater is being written, history of theater sort of needs to reimagine itself to include people who have been doing the work consistently. So those are the things that Sharon teaches me to always be available, regardless of when I have called Sharon to do, whether sometimes just to do land acknowledgement, then to get to opposite extreme of journeying with her, directing her play. Like, she has always said yes. And I know she's busy, as you heard from Sharon, but locally, nationally, internationally. But to first answer is yes. And that's, when I went through this phase that, I have to be particular, I have to choose, because life is so, I have to pick and choose. But when Sharon came into my life, first she says yes, and then she makes it happen. And so that's one thing that if I say I've learned from Sharon, I first say yes, and then I figure out how to make it happen. Including
the generosity of spirit, Yes.
Yeah. So that's one of the few things that Sharon has taught me, but it has changed my life, because when you build community building and work in the community doesn't come in my convenient time, and so you just do what is needed, and then you figure it out. And that's what Sharon is for me, always a yes and love.
I love that. I love this conversation. It's just been there's so much love in the chat for you all as well. And I just really want to thank both of you for being so open and caring in terms of your generosity of love to one another. And then we really are getting the runoff, the radiance of that to carry forward in our day. So just truly inspiring to see such a deep friendship, such a deep family that has been created through the art making, and through, like you said, the urgency and the need for this type of work. So I just so appreciate the conversation. Thank you both. Thank you, Sharon, for making time and saying yes to Net and being here with us today, and Dipankar for bringing Sharon into this conversation. What a beautiful gift. So thank you both for today, and thank you all for being with us today. We're gonna bring ourselves to a close, and just say this is going to be available for folks to view at any time on our YouTube. We'll put a link in the chat, and just want to remind folks, if you want to join us here at NET, we're doing Pay What You Decide for the rest of the fiscal year up until June. So please join us, or engage with us on social media. We have a very robust community there. So we would love to have you join us. And we'll see you next month for Shoshana and Carlton Turner for Inspiration on Demand. But thank you both. It's really special.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, Net, and everybody who's helping today. I appreciate it so much.